So someone tell me why athletes watch game film.
What's working and not working to make improvements.
Right? That's right. Anybody else?
I'm sorry, what was the question? Why?
Why do athletes watch their game film?
Oh, yeah, just make improvements and there's a lot of reasons, I guess, to see the strategy of the opponents. I mean, there's so many things you can talk about, but that's what I used to do. See the strategy, get improvements, and things like that. So
Yeah, exactly. And I always use the analogy of sports with sales because there's so many things that are similar in becoming 1% in your industry. And I think the biggest misnomer in sales is, well, not misnomer, I think the biggest flaw in sales in general is that there's really like no barrier to entry. Not like there should be, like you don't have to go to school to be in sales, but the problem is that people just get a license, buy some leads, watch some YouTube videos and just try to wing it, right? And that is my opinion why 93% of agents typically fail in their first year, because they don't know what they're doing, right? Jeremy Miner says the biggest mistake any salesperson makes is what? What do you guys think? Or not the biggest mistake salespeople make. He says, what is the biggest problem in sales? Does anyone know what the absolute biggest problem in sales is?
Closing.
Nope.
Following a process, I would imagine.
It's not an obvious answer. I mean, all of these are very good. They're all problems that people are trying to focus on. But as we already know, when we think the problem is closing, it's not the closing. It's what did we miss prior to getting to the close?
Asking the right question.
Going through the objections.
The biggest was that you, Tamara, before I answer that? So yes, I think that is a problem because people focus like 90% on the script and just kind of skim through the objections and hope and pray they don't get any, right? And when they do, it's like, oh shit, what am I supposed to say now, right? But the biggest problem in sales is actually the problems that you don't know you have. So similar to our customers, where we're trying to help them identify some problems that they don't know they have by way of the time frame in which their customers will get paid out, by way of making sure they understand the differences between the different life insurance policies, talking about the funeral industry and what may happen to their family if they don't have a protection program in place. The biggest problem that salespeople have are also the ones you don't know that you have. And the only way to identify those is by listening to yourself. So you can hear what you're missing. So you can hear what maybe other people are missing. And when you can identify gaps in your sales process, and we do it as a group and we can all come together and recognize those, it's going to make it a lot easier for you to be able to correct that moving forward. So I'm very glad that a good handful of you decided to show up today, because for those of you who have been with me for a while, what is the number one thing that drives me to do these trainings, and that I'm so grateful that people show up? Does anyone remember what I always say?
I just love being here. I love your training videos, so I get so much out of them.
I always say that in order for this team to be successful, I cannot care more about your success than you do. So for those that decide to show up, you care about the success of your business. And because this team is an opportunity that a lot of people don't realize is out there. Like you guys have no idea how many conversations I have on a daily basis where people are, you know, so stuck in going into so much debt, buying $1,000, $1,500 of leads per week and not seeing, you know, the results that they want to see. And being so grateful that there's an opportunity out there for them to come in and just plug in. But with that said, like we sent out 32 contracts in the last 2 days for people at other companies that, you know, kind of got sold, not a bill of goods, but, you know, we're sold the only way to be successful is to basically, you know, buy as many leads as you can without really a process, you know, on how to do it. And so I think that's really tough. So here, I have to make sure that you guys are successful, right? Because you're not paying for anything. And we can't keep people in seats that aren't following the process and that are just doing it their own way and aren't converting the leads, because how is that going to help anybody? It's not. So we're going to pull up some recordings and we're going to talk about them. So let's see.
Hey, Mr. Robert, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, sir.
Thank you. I'm glad you are. My name's Eric here. I am a licensed agent in the state of Colorado. I just want to let you know our call may be mildly recorded today. I understand that you're looking at different options to protect your family if you were to pass away. I'm just curious, Mr. Robert, would this be for you or anybody else in your family?
Well, it'd be for me and my family.
Okay, for you and your family, okay. And your family, does that include maybe a spouse and children also?
Yes, sir, my spouse and my kids.
Okay, all right. And I'll get some information about them in just a little bit. And Mr. Robert, before I go into what we do, I just have a few questions I'd like to ask you just so I can get a better understanding of what you might be looking for and make sure we can help you in the first place, okay?
Right.
All right. What type of protection, if any, do you currently have in place for your family if something were to happen to you?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Okay. What type of protection, if any, do you currently have in place for your family in case something were to happen to you?
None.
Okay, none. Okay. So now, so there's no policy in place, and but what about any sort of safety net, like savings or investments or anything else that might help ease that burden if you're of your family if you were to pass?
Nope.
Okay. All right. So, so today, were you out there looking before, or just today you started looking?
Just today.
Just today. Okay. All right, Mr. Robert. All right. Well, have you ever had life insurance before?
I'm going to pause really quick. One thing you could say if someone says, I just started looking today, and I can add this into the script, but sometimes I'll ask them, oh, okay, what was it about the ad that you clicked on that caused you to inquire?
Mhm.
And then they'll, you know, that could be a good one. I've used that a few times and people tell me exactly what they see. And then I can make sure that we have like the right expectation. So I know where to go later on.
Right. That's good.
And then here, when you ask someone if they just started looking, even if it was today, they could have already gotten, you know, a few different quotes online, right? We don't know what they've seen, what advertisements they've looked at. So instead of skipping the, you know, what have you found, and going right into have you ever had life insurance before, I think the what have you found question is really important because you can kind of get into their mindset as far as, you know, where they're at.
Right. Okay.
Let's see what the new company I'm with.
Oh,
But we have open enrollment now, so sometime either later today or sometime this week, I'm going to get that insurance, but I'm looking at my options as far as for life insurance, because the life insurance I see on our company benefits is kind of high.
Yes, sir. Okay. All right. I understand. And I know you said earlier that we're
So what would have been a good question, Eric, that you could have asked there to clarify what he means by that? That would be super important for expectations for you.
Right. Yeah. Well, what kind of coverage, I guess? And was it a group term? The amount of coverage, maybe?
Not even that specific. Let him kind of tell you what he knows. Who else wants to answer?
I would say-
probably say basically like, what do you mean by that? Or
How do
Yeah.
you
What do you
mean?
mean by high?
Yes, exactly. What do
Yeah.
you mean by high? Can you
Also, how
explain
high-
that to me?
How high
Yeah,
is
you
that?
always want to try to get someone to expand on their answers every opportunity you can get, because that could have meant a million different things.
could have been $10.
You never know. If you don't ask, you
Right.
don't know.
of your family also. So, and so
And I think, and of course we don't know because we didn't clarify here, but I think when sometimes people say it's for them and their family, I always clarify and say, do you mean you want a policy just for you to protect your family, or do you also
Right.
want your family to have a policy as well? And a lot of times they'll say, oh no, I just want to protect my family. I think you assumed that it was also for the
For
family, and
everyone.
maybe it was, but does that make sense, Eric?
Or he could have went into I think part of the script at that point is that ask the name at that point and date of birth for the spouse or whoever else is getting coverage.
Well, yeah, but also clarify what he meant by
Yeah.
that too, because I think that sometimes people can answer that in a couple different ways.
Yeah, can I ask a question in reference to this call?
Yeah.
This customer mentioned, because I'm sure everyone gets this on occasion, that he was getting it from work.
Mhm.
Do you indulge in that, or you put it on the back
Not
burner
yet.
and make sure you bring it back up later?
You got to bring it back up when you talk about term versus whole life.
Okay.
Yeah. At this point, it is not an appropriate time to try to insert information that you know. Right?
Okay.
If this is just like fact gathering stage, we're making it all about the customer. And you have information and ammunition to be able to use when it's your turn to talk
Yeah.
about who you are, what we do, and what you know. If you're too quick to become the hero, there's not enough, like there's still walls up right now, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we want to wait, because the more you get them to talk, the more comfortable they're going to feel with you in general. And so when you are ready to give them that information, they're going to be more open to receiving it.
anyway, I know that this is very important to you to make sure everything's taken care of.
Can you hear it now?
Yes.
Okay.
So your family's not burdened by anything. If something were to happen with any of the family members, of course, so we never know when that time could occur, of course. So,
Right.
yes, sir. So now expenses do occur, of course, when passing happens.
So, Eric, you want to be careful to not tell the customer how it feel, like how it's going to make them feel to get something where you just said, I know it's very important. You want to ask them, right? Like, how important is it for you to put something in place and let them respond and then ask them why, right? That's so much more powerful than you telling them that you know it's very important. Does that make sense?
What are you most concerned about your family having to pay for if something were to happen and you did pass away?
Funeral expenses.
Funeral expenses? Yes, sir. I got you. Yes, sir. And so God forbid if you were to pass away tomorrow, because nobody knows the hour or day, Mr. Robert, who in your family would be the one responsible of going down to the funeral home, meeting with the director, making those types of decisions, and having to pay for the cost associated with the funeral?
My wife.
Your wife, okay, and I'm sure that would be the same case if something happened to her. I know, because you're talking about, for yourself, for your wife, your children, and so forth. So, but you told me earlier you already wanted to make sure your funeral cost is taken care of. So, So I can just get a clear
Wait,
picture.
hold
Mr.
on. Did he respond to you when you said that?
Yeah, he
He
did.
was starting to say something.
Yeah, I
Hold on
mean,
just a second.
You can just get a clear picture. Funeral expenses? Yes, sir. I got you. Yes, sir. And so God forbid if you were to pass away tomorrow, because nobody knows the hour of day, Mr. Robert, who in your family would be the one responsible of going down to the funeral home, meeting with the director, making those types of decisions, and having to pay for the cost associated with the funeral?
My wife.
Your wife, okay, and I'm sure that would be the same case if something happened to her. I know because you're talking about, for yourself, for your wife, your children, and so forth. So, but you told me earlier you already want.
Yeah, I didn't hear him respond. So anytime you make an assumption or say something else, you want to make sure that you're pausing and giving them enough time to respond to you, because we're still assuming at this point that that's what he's looking for. And he didn't even get the opportunity to respond to tell you if that's important, or why it's important. So there's still like not a lot of emotion happening here.
Cost is taken care of. So, so I can just get a clear picture, Mr. Robert. Have you by chance or your wife given some thought as to whether you would prefer a traditional burial with a plot, casket, vault, headstone, or maybe do you just prefer a cremation instead?
To be honest with you, I haven't really thought about that just yet.
Yes, sir. I got you. And that's something that we kind of don't want to think about sometimes, or we put it off. And so that right there is something that you don't have to decide now. I'll get to the reason why in just a little bit while I asked you that, because we do take care of a lot of other things too. So now, so Robert, let me ask you something here. If you have you thought about?
So here, again, instead of assuming that the reason he hasn't thought about it is uncomfortable for him, you would probably maybe ask instead, right? We don't know if the reason that he hasn't decided yet is because it's uncomfortable to think about, right?
Maybe he didn't think about it at all. Can I just, I guess, comment on, I don't know what this call is supposed to be like fully.
Yeah,
but-
it's group. We
Okay.
can all comment, so that way, like, Eric can not just learn from the call himself to how to make it better, but when you hear how other people are presenting the calls, it helps you. And when you participate, it helps you realize where there are gaps that exist.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I think it was 2 opportunities, and maybe he does it a little bit later, but I think, in my opinion, I try to get the spouse's name, or at least know the beneficiary's name, so I can use it through the pitch. Did I miss if he asked for the name in the beginning when he said his wife was getting
No, I don't think
coverage?
he did.
And then when he said that his wife was going to be the one responsible, be his beneficiary, he didn't ask for the name again. But I think that would have been ideal to start to use her name throughout the presentation at that point.
So I'm going to say that getting the name is probably not going to make or break getting the sale. I actually don't really ask names that often when I'm doing my sales presentation until they start opening up to me a little bit more. And this guy is kind of like has some walls up.
He does.
Yeah. And in this case, I don't know if he really needed to ask him at this point what his name is. I think I probably would have just maybe asked some additional questions, like layering questions, to try to get him to talk a little bit more. I would have asked him, what's the reason you haven't thought about it? Or I would say, okay, that's common. And to get him to talk about it at this point, I might have said something like, do you have any idea how much it costs to have a funeral today? And, yes or no. Okay, well, sometimes people base their decisions on how much money they want their family to have to spend towards one of those. I mean, if you don't have a preference, a lot of people just do what's cheaper. And we're not even really talking about like specifics at this point, but just kind of coming up with some additional questions to try to get them to engage with you is so important. Because right now, we don't have someone that's really engaging with us. And so failing to try to ask additional questions and getting them to talk and just making assumptive statements isn't going to motivate them to want to buy from you at the end.
Do anything at all.
Yeah, it'd be a burden on my family. I mean, we do not have that type of money.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Yes, sir. And I know that's a concern that you have right there, and everybody does. Yes, sir. So.
Oh, that was such a good moment for you to let him expand on that. Like, I was so excited. He just all of a sudden started saying, we just don't have that kind of money. You know, to continue to like stay in that moment for like another minute or two, what would have been maybe something good that Eric could have said after he said that, instead of just moving on, like maybe another question.
Tell me more about that.
Yep, that's good.
Could have said, well, definitely I understand, but many of us actually don't have the money to immediately pay for somebody's funeral. What would you do if something were to happen today, though?
Not you. What would your wife do?
Or what would your wife do? Yeah, excuse me. Yeah. Well, he'd be dead, so I guess he wouldn't do anything.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, actually, you'd be surprised how many people, when they say statements, say you, when really it should be addressed towards the people they're trying to protect. It's common.
Right.
But Carlos, yeah, tell me more about that. It's perfect. I think that's such an easy thing that you could have said to get him to continue to expand. That was like such a little window that we got to see of why this is so important to him.
A way that you can get exactly what you're looking for.
Oh, wait. So the question that you missed would have been a perfect question to ask. What question did he miss?
Is it the fixed income question?
No.
No.
Does that concern you about not having any
I mean,
money?
he could have still said, tell me more about that.
All right.
Possibly, but the consequence question. What's the consequence question in the script?
What would happen if you didn't do anything?
Have you thought about?
All right.
Yeah. You know, that makes a lot of sense. Have you thought about like what would actually happen, you know, to your wife and your family if you decided not to do anything at all?
Yeah, that
You know,
probably could have opened them up a lot more.
open up a lot more, you know, and you may not have asked, you may not need to ask the does it concern you unless they don't expand. But he was wanting to talk and failing to ask those follow-up questions. And you doing Eric, you were doing a lot of more of the talking, right? It was like 80-20. You have to like make it a goal to at least make it 50-50 or 60-40 with them doing more of the talking, right?
So
Because now you're about to get into pitch mode and he's going to just be doing even less talking.
Right.
If he had
The
expanded
biggest
on,
thing I felt was
Sorry.
that I was, he was struggling to want to stay in the conversation. That was the biggest thing I was gathering. I was not trying to hurry up and get through with it. It was just, he was interacting a little bit, but it was, that's the reason why I didn't ask him about a fixed income, because he said he really basically he still was working, and so he wasn't retired and so forth, so I mean, but it was a struggle of keeping him going, it seemed like to me.
Do you guys feel that he was struggling to stay in? Not Eric. Do you feel like the customer didn't want to be on the call? I didn't get that feeling.
I didn't get that, but I hear what Eric is saying, because I find myself probably doing the same thing where I have a customer that's not as engaging, and then mentally I may pass some judgment and deviate a little bit when I probably shouldn't. So it's something that I
I'll
find
admit to that
myself falling
myself.
into.
So the other
Yeah.
thing about the fixed income part, because that part doesn't come out until after we start talking about who we are, right? So we haven't even gotten to that part yet. But when I'm talking to someone who's still working,
Right.
and I say that we specialize working with people who are living on a fixed income, I'll acknowledge that even more. Now, I know you're still working, but it's really important that we don't just find something that fits within a comfortable budget for you today, but one day you're going to retire and one day you might be on a fixed income. And so it's also important to make sure we can find something that feels comfortable when that time happens too.
I like that transition.
Right? Always.
Yeah.
It's just another way to not skip things because you're trying to plant the seed that this is, not so, everybody's budget will change eventually, right? This is the perfect moment for someone to get something.
And one
So
thing,
I'm going to go into the end now. I'm going to skip the middle because that's the easiest for everybody. And I'm going to go to the end.
You feel comfortable with. I did a 10,000. It would be $79.70. 15,000 would be $118.30.
Had you identified at this point, like talked about, and I know we didn't listen to the middle of the call, but did you go into like the differences in cost between cremation and burial? And did he ever say one way or another if he was going to lean towards one thing?
No, he didn't ever lean toward it. I did. I don't know if I did or not. I can't remember. I did let him know that we saved, thousands of dollars for clients' families, so they're not taken advantage of and being overcharged. And I went in, of course, about the Joe Craft and the FCGS and so forth. Yeah.
Do you guys want to hear the middle of the call? Do you want to just listen to most of Eric's call, or do you just want to come here to the end and pull up someone else?
I would like to hear the middle, Dana.
Anyone else?
I can hear the middle.
All right, so we're just going to do Eric's call today.
Way that you could get exactly what you're looking for at an affordable cost to you. Would that be a help? Would that help you out at all, Mr. Robert?
Oh, yes, sir.
Absolutely, yes, sir. And
This guy is engaged, Eric. Did you hear that?
I got you. I got you.
Yeah, he's engaged.
which way would it
I'm
help
not
you
hearing
out
anything.
the most?
Again?
Yeah, I don't know if anybody else is, but I'm
I
not.
can hear it
Oh,
fine.
it says share sound. Yeah, it's on.
Oh, what's going on? Okay.
I hear.
Okay.
You mean as far as for funeral expenses?
Yes, sir, of affordability, and that would just kind of ease your mind if it's something that you can definitely afford, and we can get exactly what you're looking for. That's why I was asking. Yes, sir. So that's what it's all about. Yes, sir. Is this day and time we never know. What something could happen with the cost of everything going up. So what I'm going to So now I'm going to do, a couple of things I'm going to ask you so I can just get a better understanding so we can determine whether or not it's a good fit for you. I'm going to ask you a few help questions to figure out what you qualify for. And then finally, we'll go over a range of options of pricing. And you just let me know what you'd like to do next, if that sounds fair.
Okay.
All right.
Just real quick, when you got to the end, was the wife home?
No, she wasn't. She was at work.
Okay.
I think so.
Mr. Roberts.
And then he at the end though, he said he just wanted to just get quotes for him at this time
Oh,
because
Okay.
I don't think she was home.
yeah, that's fine. Okay, here we go.
For our agency, it represents Lincoln Heritage Life Insurance Company. They've been the leader in final expense insurance for the last 57 years. We also specialize working with seniors who are on a fixed income, which means all our programs are customized, okay? So just interested, are you living on a fixed income, Robert? Is that concerning to you or anything?
Well, no, I mean, fixed income is far for my job.
Yes,
but
sir.
anything else.
Right. So, and I understand. So it's very important to me that we find something that feels comfortable for you and your family, because if you can't afford the payments, the policy's going to cancel,
Morning.
then it's not going
Hi.
to do your family any good anyway, right?
Did you want that?
Right.
Yes,
Sir.
please. Oh,
The first thing I want you to know, Mr. Robert, is that Lincoln Heritage only provides permanent whole life insurance as opposed to term. Now, do you happen to know the difference between the two, or has anyone ever explained it to you before?
I kind of seem to think so, but refresh my memory, please.
Okay, I surely will. The best way I can explain it to you is that term insurance is temporary insurance. It's designed to provide a large amount of coverage for a small monthly payment, but it only lasts for about 10 years or so, and then it cancels.
Okay.
Yes, sir. So just an example, I know you've probably seen advertisements out there online or on the mail or on television about the 995 plan of AARP, Globe Life, and so forth. Is that correct?
Yep.
Now, those right there are perfect examples of companies advertising for term, which is temporary protection programs. They take advantage of the fact that you might be looking for the most coverage, but for the lowest possible payment. Well, then it starts out really low, Mr. Robert, and then the price tends to go up every couple of years, and then ends up canceling anyway. Once it cancels, you may be 10 years older. You have to reapply. At that point, your health could have changed. It may be unaffordable, or you could even get declined. The worst part about it is if you do reach a certain age of 80, it's going to cancel forever, and you may be uninsurable because of your age. So you see that the type of temporary insurance may not be exactly the right option protecting you and your family if you were to pass away.
Right.
Yes, sir. So now also bank.
Okay, we have a lot to unpack here. Who wants to give some feedback?
Well, one of the main things I see is there's certain questions that he's asking, but he's moving on to the next part without getting a response. Like the last question where he said, do you see how this may not be the right fit? And then diving into more about his response, he went on to the next part.
Okay, who else?
I do this too. So, I mean, but it does sound a little bit rushed, not engaging. So I do it too. And that's what I'm hearing.
There was an opportunity in this section because it was skipped over a little bit in the discovery phase. What do you guys think he could have looped back in here to make the call more relevant to the customer? Anyone?
What are you leaning towards? What?
So like we found out some information in the beginning of the call that would have been really, really appropriate to bring up now.
The fact that he couldn't afford it.
No?
I mean, yeah.
So this is really good practice because this is something that's super obvious to me and may not be so obvious to anyone else on the call, which is very interesting. Nobody has any idea what information we got from him in the beginning of the call that would have been so great to talk about right now.
Can you repeat the question? Okay.
Oh, the term insurance where he is getting from his job.
Right.
That may not be there when he.
So now would have been a really, really great time, exactly, to talk about. So let's talk about the insurance that your work is offering you for a second. Right. And now you have to kind of know to deviate from the script, and you have to humanize this conversation and make it about your customer and give them a chance to participate. So you would want to say, most companies are only offering term insurance to their employees because it's like a group plan, right? Everyone gets to participate, and then the employer sometimes contributes, but once you leave that job, you typically lose those benefits. So what type of plan are they offering you? I would have asked, because he said it was too expensive. I would have said, what type of coverage is it? What was the payment? That would have been a really, really great opportunity to talk about why he didn't want to sign up for that. Because when you know why he wasn't going to sign up for that, you would have been able to find out more of like his motivating factors behind that. Like that was so important to try to uncover. Does that make sense, Eric?
It's not Eric, but those employer plans, I thought they're super cheap. So when he says it's too high, I'm like, well, what do you mean too high? They're super cheap. Is he like, did he lose the job and now he has to get it on his own? That's what I'm leaning
It
towards.
can
Like,
depend on your salary.
Well, yeah, we just don't know. There's the questions weren't asked, so we don't really know what was behind that. We don't know how much coverage he was being offered. We don't really know anything. So
okay.
like so many questions we needed to uncover there rather than just focusing on the script and the pitch. And then just moving on to what's in there, to being able to know when it's appropriate to engage. Like that's why we write everything down, so we can remember to bring it back when it's appropriate to do so. Like Andre, you even said in the beginning, would that have been an appropriate time to talk about his job coverage? No, we want to talk about it here. This is where you would have had that great moment to get him talking about why it was too expensive. Why is it not a good fit? Why did he not buy it? What is he looking for? So, because people are going to buy when they really feel like you understand them. And right now, I don't even understand him at all because I don't understand his situation. So how can I sell something to someone when I don't understand where they're at?
Mr. Robert.
Medibank.
Okay. Yes, sir. Okay. So now I didn't know if you had that offered to you or not. I just wanted to ask you if you did or not. So now the whole life protection policies are exactly the opposite. Once you're approved, your payment can never go up, your coverage can never go down, and it can never be canceled at any age. So essentially, permanent protection and guaranteed to be there for your family whenever the time comes, if that makes sense to you. Yes, sir.
All right.
Yes, sir. So I just want to move on a little bit of letting you know why more people choose Lincoln Heritage.
Anyone want to comment on that? Are we awake?
It sounds like the customer.
I'm sorry, I came.
Okay, better.
Sorry, I came in late, but on the issue of he's working and he's got a policy, it sounds like he was still sort of leaning in the term issue.
He doesn't have a policy.
Oh, he doesn't have okay, I missed that. I came in late.
Did he talk about that the policy doesn't go with you when you leave your position, and the cost of insurance is so much more expensive, 10 or 15 years now?
Well, that's where we said that we missed opportunity in the term part. But when we talk about whole life, what could Eric have done to maybe get the customer to engage a little bit more at that point?
Ask him if that's the type of plan that he's interested in pursuing.
And what else?
Ask him why it might be the plan he's interested in.
Yeah. So now that you guys are hearing a call played back, does it feel like obvious to you that failing to ask those questions are leading to no sale? Like I can already tell this is not going to be a sale.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's obvious. And it's just probably going to continue because now the customer is not engaged.
Take anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks to pay out. By law, it can even take up to 6 months. Did you know that or not?
Yeah, I kind of read that somewhere.
Yes, sir. And that just really seems to be unfair. You know, when it comes to paying for a funeral, your family just doesn't have time to wait that long. You know, it can take weeks just for the funeral home to even provide the family the death certificate needed to file the claim, which is something nobody can control. But when we get the call that that from your family that you've passed, Lincoln Heritage is going to get to work right away with a unique program called the Funeral Consumer Guardian Society. It's a nonprofit organization that's designed to get your family paid right away and make sure that they are not being overcharged by the funeral home or even taken advantage by the funeral home. Okay. So I just want to let you know what we're doing to help your family out. Okay. And Mr. Robert, just curious, have you or your family ever had to plan or pay for a funeral before?
Yes.
Okay, I have to, and it's not a pleasant thing. So, yes, sir. So now, if you or your family,
What else did he miss? Eric, I don't mean to keep picking on you,
I-
but this should be a really good learning experience.
Yeah, he
I
didn't
heard two
miss
things in
ranch.
that last part. The first one was the guy acknowledged that he heard it took that long to pay out. I probably would have asked, I mean, think about it, whatever his name is, where would that leave your wife if it took 4 to 6 weeks for her to receive a payment to pay for your funeral? How would that, what kind of position would that put her in? Because he
That
already said he
definitely
didn't.
would be a question I would ask, but you could also unpack that a little bit more before you ask that question to kind of make it build up a little bit more.
Okay.
Like, where did you hear that?
Okay.
Right. And so just more ways to get them to talk. See, the whole goal with these conversations is to do everything you possibly can to get the customer to talk.
Yeah. No,
Right.
I agree. And the second one was the fact that he said he did make arrangements for a funeral before. I would have definitely dove into that a little bit more and asked, what was that experience like for him? It could have
For
been
sure.
good. It could have been bad.
Of course.
But we're assuming, I think he may be assuming that it was not a good situation or just didn't know what that was like for him. But I definitely would have had him elaborate a little bit more.
Yeah. And when you
I
miss
also,
those,
oh,
go ahead,
sorry.
Tamara. Go ahead.
Oh,
Was it
no,
Tamara? Oh, April.
It's
Yeah, go ahead, April.
Yeah, sorry. I also like to ask there, it's not in the script, but I think I heard you ask maybe once, Dana, did that person have insurance? Excuse me. Because the next bit of the script, is talking about, not getting paid out in the proper amount of time. So that kind of opens up the customer. If they didn't have insurance, you lead right into the next part. But if they did, I asked them, oh, and do you recall how long it took to get that claim paid out to you?
Yeah,
kind of opens up
exactly.
the conversation a little
That's
more.
all really, really good. Like, if someone has planned a funeral, yeah, I mean, I know it's not a ton of questions in there for you, but this type of exercise is showing you where there's missed opportunities for you to engage. And a lot of it, because you can't script every single call, a lot of it just has to come from you just being curious. And coming from a position to seek to understand, not seek to get them to understand you.